Can and will be held against you in cyberspace. As you're still talking right now, Landon, going out all over the world. Something about jail. I don't know what you were saying, but it's going all over the world.
True leaders don't create followers.
True leaders don't create followers.
Finish it, Drew. They create more leaders.
Every shirt that I wear, they just stab me. They just pick on it every day.
Well, I like a good quote. The word of the day is panacea. What is that? Who?
Pancake in Italian.
No, it's not pancake in Italian. Did we talk about yesterday's word of the day? Copacetic? Everything's good. Everything's fine. Okay. Panacea. Rachel. What is it? I thought that might be one somebody knew. What's a panacea?
Continents are together.
Pangea. That's pretty good though. Close.
Almost.
Well, let's use our linguistics. Ready? Our etymology. Pan. What's pan mean? Did you learn that? If there's pan in front of, if there's pan as the prefix or the beginning of a word, what's that mean? All. Very good. So pantheism. All. So a panacea is something that is held up as like, hey, this is the cure for everything. A synonym would be a cure-all. A panacea.
Like face cream?
What's that?
Is it like face cream? I don't know.
That was worse than my guess.
I couldn't tell you.
You're not creating.
A cure for all ills. A panacea. Usually used with something health related.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Pan, all.
Maybe you saw in an advertisement it's a panacea for all skin conditions. I don't know.
We just talked about it.
Okay. Any questions on, if you haven't said this phrase out loud, say it out loud so that you're comfortable with it, so that you don't get the test and you go like this. What's this phrase?
Are all these words going to be on the test?
Of course, that's what I'm saying. So if I was sitting in your seat at one time in my life as a teenager and I was in a class and they used the phrase, this is the truth, and they used the phrase like dialectical materialism, my mind might have been like, I don't even know what that's such a weird phrase that I just shut off. But this is the essence of Marxism. You have to know it. Materialism, that's the easy part, right? Everything is about the material world. With Marxism, everything's about economics. The dialectic part is that, again, do you understand this? Someone has an idea. So you counter that idea, and there's tension brought between those two ideas. And from that tension, eventually there'll be a synthesis. Those two ideas will create a compromise, so to speak, and you'll get a whole new idea. And then there'll be other tensions brought against that new idea, another antithesis. And what the Marxist believes is that eventually, and they would rather it be sooner than later, eventually, globally even, people will wake up to the fact that as we go through this series of dialects, this series of tensions, eventually people will see the light, and the common people, the workers of the world, will unite, and we will all live together in perfect harmony, because we'll all be equal. There will be no class. There will be no need for government, because everybody's going to be satisfied. And as today's current situation, I could bring it up for you if I had the time. There's an organization called the World Economic Forum, and one of the tenets of that World Economic Forum that's being put out to the public is, one day, soon, they hope, you will own nothing and like it. You will own nothing and like it. Think about what is. That seems like a simple statement. You're like, oh, just blow that off. No, these are people, very powerful people from different countries of the world that meet together to try to figure out, okay, how are we going to, world trade and all that stuff. You will own nothing and like it. It's not a conspiracy. It comes right, you can go right to the website. Same with if you've heard about eating bugs. It's not a conspiracy. Because you gotta get rid of the meat industry, the cattle industry, because they'll tie in global warming. There's another tension, right? Global warming. You've got all the so-called experts that they tell you are so united and it's unanimous about global warming, causing this tension between people wanting to live their lives normally and what the so-called authorities are saying is when you're living your life normally like that and you're using fossil fuels, you're gonna eventually cause the world to burn, and you're not a very good person because you're destroying the earth, and you create that tension, and eventually you'll get everyone on the same page. You'll own nothing and like it. We will all share in the misery. And think about how less stressful that would be, Grayson. What a less stressful life to not think that you really have to achieve. That everything will just be taken care of, we'll all be equal. Some people might like that idea. Think about it. A lot of people might like that idea. Like I talked about yesterday. These people that otherwise wouldn't achieve anything. And then they're encouraged to go to a college, write a few papers, get a piece of paper that says they're educated, go get a job in government, education, and media. All of a sudden you're a somebody, when you really did nothing. Think about all the politicians that are in Washington right now, or in Columbus, or all the other places we put them, that never really had a real job. They were able to write some papers, give a couple speeches, gain favor of a few people who had some money, and now they're working. They've never really accomplished anything. Kakistocracy. All right, moving on. I hope. Economic determinism. Whoa, that's a big one. Again, look at the words. Economic. Everything to the Marxist comes down to economics. Who's controlling the resources? And determinism. What determines the outcome of any society? Who's controlling the resources? So who should be controlling the resources? The Rockefellers? JP Morgans? Is that fair? Is that right? Those are the people that determine history, and those are the people that are going to determine the future. And if you guys would wake up and understand that we have to take control of the past, present, and future away from this elite, small number of people, those 1%ers, then the future is going to be so much better. You see this class struggle in law, politics, religion, culture, and listen, like we said yesterday, any old crisis will do. You know, set it up between the rich and the poor, blacks and whites, men and women. Constant tension to break down the dominant societal structure. By the way, that dominant societal structure is dominated by Judeo-Christian ideas, Western civilization, this idea of some people being better than others, meritocracy, all those things got to go. Because some people, as we learned when we were looking a little bit at the difference between equality and equity, some people are just endowed by better skills. And is it fair that they would be compensated economically because they have better skills and abilities? No, they should use those skills and abilities to make sure that they're taking care of the needs of everyone else that doesn't have those. Why do we have an economic system where some people, just because of how they were born with certain skills, or even worse, geographic privilege? You know, that word privilege gets thrown around a lot, especially with you people, you lily white faces. Right? So you've got white privilege, you've got geographic privilege. Why should you be better off than someone else just by virtue of this born white or born in America? Do you understand how it's so easy to appeal to people? especially those that are already not very, don't have much ability. And you can appeal to this thing called white guilt, especially. Yeah, think about it. Why is my life so much better than somebody the same age as me living in Niger or Chad or Zimbabwe? You know, no, really. Why should my life be so much better just because I'm white or I'm an American? Is that fair? Is that right? Any tension will do to create a new synthesis. So we'll perpetuate always racism, class warfare, religion. Hey, that tension between even Christianity and the non-Christian world in America, or that tension between Islam and Israel, we can use that. Any tension will do, any crisis will do, to create a new synthesis. I mean, think about it like this. After the slaughter on 1 month ago today, and the war that's going on right now over in Israel, do you think more or less people will be swayed to think that religion's a problem in the world? Right? To use this opportunity to imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say, I'm a Jew, but I'm not the only one. They hope someday you'll join them, and the world will be as one. Great song. Artistically speaking. Marxist professors some of you are finding out as you go through your CCP classes. And if you are a Christian and you happen to be going to a public university, you're going to have to figure out a way to get good grades, because that's important, and then be able to figure out which professors you can actually express what you really believe or even pursue truth, and which ones that you have to dance around because you recognize that their biases will come into play when it comes to grading your stuff. So 20%, we're going to talk more about these numbers. This is 10 years ago, that 20% of professors in social studies departments in universities will admit that they're Marxists. Listen, maybe write that in the margin, that they'll admit they're Marxists. Because Marxism isn't like it's still kind of in the shadows in American politics. Bernie Sanders, we said 10 years ago, coming out and saying that he's a Marxist, that was a big deal, right? So you have more and more people, especially in university, government, media settings, that are becoming more comfortable with Marxism. But in the society at large, and flyover country, between Massachusetts and between Boston and San Francisco, most of the heart of the country, no. You can't say you're a Marxist. You have no chance to get elected. So the fact that 20% would admit that they're Marxists is pretty significant. You understand what I'm saying? If you're reading between the lines, then you can infer that many more of them are Marxists. Because not very many people 10 years ago would admit that. Am I making sense? It's like they were so confounded in the 2016 election. The polls running up to the election showed that Hillary Clinton was going to win. It was going to be fairly easy over Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump, the news coverage of Donald Trump for 8 years now has been heavily negative. Have you figured that out? Have you picked up on that? I mean, they do surveys. There's media outlets that look at the news coverage of certain people or certain events, and they'll say, like, you can do the data, you can analyze it scientifically. Like 80-some% of the news coverage of Donald Trump is negative. It's probably more than that, right? when people are polled, people don't always give their true feelings. They were totally blindsided by this. If you would have seen election night, you were a little too young at that point, to see the reaction of the left on election night 2016. It was like, they couldn't believe it. Because there was no way that was going to happen. And even in the polls, it didn't show that. Because there was this political theory that a lot of people, when they were asked by someone else, that they're maybe a little bit cynical about, okay, who's calling me, who's asking me this? Do I support Donald Trump? Click. Or, I don't really want to readily admit that in a society where there's so much negative, but lo and behold, when they got into the privacy of the voting booth and they had the choice, when no one else can see, they chose Donald Trump. So I don't want to dwell too much on that, but that's, when you look at polls and statistics, you gotta realize, you gotta infer, you gotta read between the lines. By the way, anybody hear the latest polls yesterday? Anybody pay attention to the news? So the big news yesterday was the New York Times. By the way, the New York Times, considering American politics, pretty far to the left on the spectrum. So it was their poll. And their poll in those 5 states that determined the last election, they're probably going to determine the next one, that if it's just Trump against Biden, Trump's like winning by like 6, 8. With all this negativity, Trump is right now in the courtroom having to face one of these indictments that they're throwing at him.
You said points or states?
5 states, he's winning by like 5 or 6 points. And one of them's like 8. Which is a lot, and it's a New York Times poll. So these are the people that, like, you know, they're going to answer to New. If New York Times called me, I would be one that would just say click. Well, I wouldn't give the New York Times time of day. So the fact that Trump's winning by 5% in, say, Pennsylvania. Now, granted, it's over Biden, which, as I told you, Biden's not going to be the 2024 candidate. And if I'm wrong, I will buy you. You might not know this by the end of May, but the chances of Biden being a Democrat candidate are slim, extremely slim. Be amazing if he was still the candidate by the time school's out. Almost impossible for him to be the candidate by the time the Democratic convention comes along in the summer. Because when you look at the polls, most Democrats don't want Biden. 70% of Democrats think that Biden shouldn't be running. It's not going to happen. Especially if they keep getting the news that Trump is winning. Because what they can't have, more than having Biden as president, is they can't have Donald Trump president. Not again. Not again. The derailment they suffered for 4 years under his presidency can never happen again, which tells you why they're going through what they're going through. It's supposed to be, you see a crime and you go looking for the criminal. In regimes that we are living under today, and I told you about that new release of the movie Police State, when you live in a government that's, the central government is so strong, you have a tendency to have to deal with this. Instead of there's a crime, go find the criminal. There's the man. Now go find the crime. And that's basically what's happening with former President Trump. Okay, if you've ever wondered who first said that, who said that quote that you've all had memorized since 5th grade? Those who do not remember the past are condemned. You may have heard it said, destined to repeat it. Why do we study history? Yesterday's video we learned that communism is, what's the record? Marxist communism when implemented in countries. What's the record there? What's the record of success? 0. Like, no, Mr. Franklin, you mean like, you know, generally speaking, Marxist communism when implemented in a country doesn't work out well for that country. No. Specifically speaking, 0%. no country is better off economically after Marxist communism has taken hold. Why are we doing this then? Why are we sitting here in 2023 having to redo and relearn the same lessons? Why is your generation going to once again have to battle this idea, this failed, miserable idea of Marxism? Why are you going to have to do it again? Because of the dialectic materialism. Your generation thinks that Marxism is still the ideal way to govern. It's just that the former people that did it, they're bad Marxists. Marxism, communism isn't bad. There's been bad Marxists and communists. Just listen. We'll do it better this time. See, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, and the new thesis is, we'll do it better this time. Our version, your generation's version of Marxism, is going to work. And then, people like me are going to fight against it. You're going to have that tension in the society. And there'll be something new, and what they believe is that something new will be closer to global communism than they were before. Because they play the long game. Right? As long as they keep incrementally working towards global communism, they're kind of okay. And by the way, depending on the college campus you go to, being part of the socialist Marxist crowd is kind of cool. You know, you're revolutionaries, man. You know, this society that's so against you, you can't make it, not because of your own weaknesses, it's because society's so against you. And we can change it, man. Just join the revolution. And by the way, you get this Che Guevara guy. Anybody ever seen, before I put his image up there, does anybody have any idea who I'm talking about? His name, if you just say Che, the good little Marxist in your generation will already know who he is. You may have seen his face on someone's t-shirt that shows that they're a really cool revolutionary. Anybody heard of Che Guevara? Besides Mrs. Tosh? Anybody in here heard of Che? So, Guevara, you heard of him? A person that is romanticized on college campuses. What did you heard of them because they mentioned them yesterday in the video. What was the quote? Anybody remember? Anybody remember the quote about executing people, Landon? This Che Guevara that we're about to see romanticized by a little 2-minute documentary that's just gonna tell you, oh, Che, what a great guy. You know, he was trying to bring power to the people in Cuba. What was the quote about execution?
It was like he didn't need a reason to execute a man, just the fact that he could was enough.
Yeah. He's heroic. Che, Che, Che. Wear your t-shirts. Wear your headband. You know, there's a famous picture of Che is got the cool flowing long hair and the kerchief over his headband and what else? In the documentary we're about to watch, they compare him to Jesus. I mean, you're not cool unless you go along with Che Guevara, the revolutionary. I mean, look how society is stacked against you. You guys don't really think it's fair, do you? The way society's set up? Anybody think it's fair? Guys. Anybody think this is fair, the way that our whole system's set up, geared towards the privileged and the rich? You guys aren't answering that. You see how easy it is to convince people? Most people do not feel like winners. They just don't. They feel like life's hard. And you can convince people that we can make life better for you. I actually don't want to watch this again because I already had to watch it once today. Kind of sickening, but this is what's out there. By the way, you might also be surprised to know that I showed a video from Al Jazeera.
Perhaps no revolutionary has been as Ernesto Guevara, or Che as he was known. The Argentine-born doctor who fought by Fidel Castro's side played a key role in the Cuban Revolution. He then tried to launch Marxist uprisings in the Congo and then Bolivia, where he was captured and executed. The images taken after his death, in which many say he looked like Christ, only added to his legend as a left-wing martyr. The Oscar-winning film Motorcycle Diaries was based on his early years. When he was 14, Harry Villegas joined Che in the fight for revolution in the Cuban mountains. For the next 12 years, he never left his side, until he miraculously managed to escape.
By the way, we don't talk about it enough, we just always mention it, right? Fidel Castro, Cuba. Before Fidel Castro took over Cuba in 1959, 1960, Cuba was such a thriving place. It was, everybody's heard of Las Vegas, right? So Las Vegas was in its infancy in Nevada. Cuba would have been like everybody and Americans would go to Cuba for like vacation. It was a thriving place. Capitalism has created such a great place for America, great relationships with America. And then the Marxist communists took over. Do you think, okay, put it this way. How many people, and I don't have the exact numbers, how many people before 1959 were making makeshift rafts to escape Cuba in the dead of night, hoping they can make the 90-mile trek and be rescued by the United States Coast Guard so they can be in the United States? And then how many did that after 1959? It's a rhetorical question because it's many. Nobody was going to do that before communist takeover. Isn't that self-explanatory? And then the Cuban people that are now living in Florida, how do you think they vote? You are a first-generation American that has come from Cuba. Or your parents did and now you're a young person. How do you think the majority of them vote? Republican or Democrat? Republican. Because they're like, wait a minute. Our family escaped the misery of communism to come to America. You're not going to turn, we're not going to let you turn America into communist Cuba. And that's true for people that come from all over the world that escape these Marxist regimes. I've heard many people interviewed over the years that come from the former Soviet Union. They, more than me, more than anyone, are aghast at what is America doing? All the millions of people that, why are they streaming across our border now? They're coming from oppressive governments now into America illegally, risking everything, leaving their homes, walking hundreds of miles. There's a reason. And one political party, the Democrats, have this fantasy that all these people are going to come in and they're going to register them to vote. They're all going to vote for the Democrats and perpetuate their power. Not the Cuban Americans. They know better.
Captured during Che's final battle against the Bolivian army.
We hid behind bushes, and on a small radio we heard the news that Che had been captured and killed. The wings of our hearts fell.
Villegas says that Che's reputation as a tough but just revolutionary who practiced what he preached was well earned.
He felt that because he had more education than us, he had greater obligations to set the example, to always lead by example. He never cut himself a break so that he could demand the best from us.
Today, Che Guevara's image has become immortalized, especially in Cuba.
Some would probably say too much. Che Guevara has become the ultimate revolutionary icon and must-have for all the tourists that come to this island. His face is absolutely everywhere, from these bags to t-shirts, as you can see, to knapsacks, everything you can possibly imagine.
Do you ever notice when you get a different kind of car, all of a sudden you see the kind of car you're driving all around the road? Anybody experience that? Nobody? Right? Like, I've never really noticed that kind of car, and then I have one, and now I see those cars all the time. You never really noticed if you've seen this image of Che, but now you'll probably see it. And you'll be like, oh, I never really noticed it, didn't know who that was, but it's more prevalent than you think.
The kind of image that Che Guevara himself would probably not have approved of.
But he would surely have been proud to know that for the last 50 years, Cuban school children have been taught to follow his example. Every morning of every day, they recite this chant. It means pioneers for communism. We shall be like Che. But do the new generations of Cubans really believe it? We consulted a group we found trying to access a Wi-Fi signal next to an internet cafe.
It's like a poem that you memorize, but you don't act on it. Very few people actually follow in Che's footsteps. We all think differently.
Today, Che's Marxist version of revolution is considered by most as an anachronism. Yet the consensus here seems to be that Che represents an ideal, a selfless rebel who, unlike so many others, did not live to betray his principles. And it's that image of Che that has never aged. He wrote,
Anyway, I don't want to show it, but you have to know that the truth of who Che was, a violent revolutionary who thought it was just to kill people because they believed in freedom. And here he is, romanticized. Okay, today there are 5 outright well-known communist countries like China, North Korea, Vietnam, Laos, and Cuba. By the way, we already learned that these countries don't call themselves communist. What do they call themselves? The People's Republic of China. Okay. The Democratic Republic of North Korea. Okay. The world buys that. But even those countries that aren't outright communist, many countries have socialism as their official policy. Many European countries, socialism has taken a very strong hold. There's a constant battle in America to not allow socialism to become the dominant economic force. I would argue we're kind of losing that battle. More and more people are willing to give over their health care to the government, education to the government. Like we mentioned yesterday, their money to the government. Central bank digital currency should scare you. It's so convenient. What are you so worried about? Those who do not remember the past are condemned, destined to repeat it. What are you so worried about? Conspiracy theories. See, it used to be not that long ago, up until about 3 years ago, the way they would shut people up is the number one way to shut someone up like me is say I'm a racist. And then nobody wants to be called a racist, so then you're done. Second, call the person a conspiracy theorist. The only problem is, especially in the last 3 years, conspiracy theories that are coming true at a much faster rate than ever, the conspiracy theory label is losing its luster. Because now there's a meme out there, we're about to the point where the difference between a conspiracy theory and the truth, we're down to about 3 weeks. Oh, you're just a conspiracy theorist, and you would say, okay, you'll see, and it would take years for it to unfold. And now, with the way things are developing so rapidly, You don't have to wait that long. But what otherwise would have been a conspiracy theory is true. And we got 30-some kids before me every day, doing what we can to make sure socialist, communist, Marxism does not take hold in these here United States. It's up to you.